Hello and welcome to HR Bytes, a podcast and video series to bring you stories of HR professionals who bring a think globally and act locally digital HR agenda to their work. Everyday people who are driving digital transformations in their organizations, data driven and future fit digital HR leaders. This is your host, Jay Polaki, and today's guest is Amit Parmar. Amit has over 15 years of experience leading global HR talent teams in Fortune 100 companies. He is now CEO of Clickify.me, which is a simple software platform that helps recruiters and hiring managers publish branded job ads across social media and attract relevant and diverse candidates in minutes. Welcome to HR Bytes, Amit. So happy to have you on the show today.
Yeah, likewise, Jade. Appreciate the time here.
Absolutely. Could you tell our audience a little more about the work you do and, how you became an HR tech entrepreneur in the midst of a pandemic?
Yeah, Jay. Look, I've always loved technology. I grew up as a technologist. My first job in HR was with IBM, actually doing PeopleSoft implementations way back, right? And so I always had the affinity for how technology, if if executed and implemented right, with the appropriate user adoption, can have a major impact on work processes as well as on people in general. So
Absolutely.
that was really the basis for why we created Clickify. It's simple solutions to basic problems.
Absolutely. And now that the entire focus of every business is a people first, digital first strategy, I think your product is very well positioned in the market to do great things. So all the best to you.
Sure.
My questions for you today are basically around HR technology, and I wanted to learn how you found in your work. Tech adoption has kind of increased at warp speed within the HR function, and how has HR technology been adopted in HR functions, do you think, over the past year?
Oh yeah. Look, I think we are the recipient, if you will, of the technological advancements that are going on, right? The fourth industrial revolution that all industries are facing right now, right? So
Mhm.
and every major function in a company is really rethinking and relooking at how work can be done in a more simpler way. Either it's aided by technology, or in some cases, actually having technology do all of the work so that people can move up the value stream, right? And it's not just in HR, Jay, as I mentioned. It's happening in marketing and finance, accounting, you name it, right? And it's so we're at a very interesting point in our career journey as HR leaders and HR practitioners to really think about every little process or the work that you do. Can it be done? Number one, can it be eliminated? Right.
Oh, let's not
Right.
talk about that. We don't want to scare people off.
No, I'm just talking about work. I'm just talking about work, right? Not people, but just talking about work. So like, and frankly, COVID has accelerated our thinking from that perspective, right?
Mhm.
But really, you think about work and you say, okay, why am I doing this to begin with? And that's the first question, right? The second question is, all right, if it's important enough for you to keep doing that work, then how do I make it more efficient and effective through the use of technology, right? There's a lot of fanfare on AI and chatbots and all of that. I still believe personally that those technologies are still maturing and there are ways to go, but it is here. It's going to be impervious in our working lives as well as in our personal lives. So, as I think about work in general, it's really about looking at why are we doing this work the way we are. Number two, can we use technology to make it efficient and effective? And number three, which is the really important question as an HR practitioner, is all right. If I make technology, if I can free up some time for me, am I spending the time with business leaders, with employees to really understand the culture of the organization? How am I impacting the culture of an organization as an HR leader? Right. So The way I view technology is just really enabling HR people to do actually what they were meant to do to begin with, which is be more human.
The H in HR.
That's
So
right. That's right. And I don't think that's ever going to go away from my perspective.
absolutely. And you worked in a number of big companies across industries, um, and you've implemented a lot of technology at those companies. What role has your social capital, your connections within the organization as well as outside the organization, play in generating, incubating, and kind of scaling innovation in your HR function?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Social capital. The way I view social capital is in the terms of a casino. I guess you think about chips, right? Right. 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 Uh,
Yes.
and that's how I always viewed social capital. Is you have a limited stack of chips, and how do you intentionally figure out where you're going to spend those chips, right? From a social capital perspective. So um, the way we have really thought about technology over the years, be it in HR or actually outside of HR, is how are we going to drive the adoption so that it becomes ingrained in the hearts and minds of our people, right?
Hmm.
And that's it could be any technology, right? Sophisticated or simple. The number one cause, based on my experience, of failure of any technology is user adoption and user experience, right? And
Absolutely.
so,
That's the biggest.
right, and you can have the best tech out there, but if you implement it without the appropriate change management, awareness, adoption, the change curve, right? It's not going to be as effective and impactful, and the ROI actually is very limited over the years, and we actually have hard data on that, right? So the way I think about social capital is really understanding who are those players, right? Depending on the organization you're in, if it's a top-down type of an organization, you have a different approach. If it's a startup, right, where we've got a bunch of folks doing different things, very entrepreneurial, it's a different approach, right? And so you really have to think about, in the context of the company that you operate in, what works best for you. The change models, there's so many out there, right? But really, what I've experienced is you have to take that with a grain of salt and figure out, what works for you as a company when you're thinking about technology.
Love the analogy of the chips. And to me it's like, who's holding all the chips in the organization, right? You need to know those players and you need to know how to get those chips out of their hands, basically, right?
That's right.
Great analogy. So what's one piece of advice you have for HR professionals who are looking to adopt or learn new technology?
Yeah, wow. Look, there's in this day and age, there's an app that's created like every day, right? Probably multiple, probably thousands, right? And HR people, including myself and my previous roles, just get hit up with so much out there, right? So I think the key question, and when you're thinking about new technologies, it's how are you reducing the noise that's created by, it's all venture backed, a lot of the technology that's out there right now. So there's a lot of money being spent on marketing and so on, right? So what I would suggest, and this is how I learned how to really cut through all the noise, is just create a network of, to your point, Jay, with social capital, right? And we now have all the tools such as LinkedIn, Slack, and you name it. There's a plethora of tools out there to get connected with influencers as well as practitioners who've actually implemented this tech, whatever tech it is, and I just pick up the phone. Really, right? Back in the day, right? You actually say, "Hey, can I just talk to you for 15 minutes?" Right? Right.
Absolutely. And it always
Uh,
worked. It always worked.
yeah, yeah, and it still holds true, right? It could be text now versus talking, right? But that's okay. But really, just connecting with the people and saying, "Hey, I'm getting this tech being pushed to me. What do you really think?" Right? Of people who've actually used it and gone through that, and lessons learned, right? So I grew up in consulting. The first thing you learn is learn from other people's mistakes, right? Right, right. Right, and that
Yes.
still holds true. If you want to really get plugged into technology, there's a lot of venues out there. A lot of great HR tech influencers out there who you can reach out to as well. They see a plethora of this in any given day. So that would be my advice, Jay.
Great advice. And what do you think HR can do to prepare for this increase in remote work and hybrid work that, is here to stay for at least this year? I'm sure of that. What do you think about how we can prepare for
Yeah.
this?
Yeah, look, it's been almost 8 months, right, since we've, maybe even a
10?
little longer, right, right. Who's counting, right?
I'm
But
counting.
uh, but really, as we think about the role of HR, like I mentioned earlier, it's always been how do you create the human element, and now it's just a little different depending on the industry that you're in. It's about how do you create a highly engaged workforce. And to be honest, in certain industries, like in the tech industry where I grew up, we already had distributed workforces, right, around the world. Uh, so, and not so much for, let's say, in the manufacturing industry, or maybe even in like the old school pharma industry, right? So uh, the advice I would have is really, think about going back to basics as an HR leader, right? Like how do you drive connections with people? We know the number one reason why people actually live, or not live, but stay in a company is who they work with, right?
Live in a
Uh,
company. Yeah. Well, we practically live in the company, right? We spend most of
yeah,
our
yeah,
lives in the company. So yeah, that
yeah,
would be
yeah.
that would be a good phrase.
So it's really who you're connected with, and that's really the what I call the mesh, or the stickiness factor. Is how do you create, as an architect of culture, right? As HR, as well as leaders in general, how do you really start to create more camaraderie? There's simple things that, frankly, they're not new, right? You have Celebrate Awards, recognition awards. You've got all kinds of tools to get into engaging people better. Communication is always here to stay, uh, and we know, right? Simon Sinek always says, it's not the what, but really the how and the why, right? That you
More
got to
the why
communicate,
than anything.
right?
The golden
Right.
circle.
Yeah, absolutely, right? So, just going back to basics with that, it's easier said than done, though, because you've got people now who are, remote in many cases, and there's a whole question around the trust factor, right? We always believed in it as an HR, as HR practitioners, is, hey, you got to be able to trust your people. But the same's got to be true for line managers out there as well, right? So how do you coach the line managers to think that way? I think that, now they've been in this world for the last 10 months, Jay, right? Uh, they're starting to learn that. I mean, that's what I'm hearing, and that's something that we just have to continuously coach, and then also talk to your people, right? I've
Absolutely.
always believed, Jay. Look, no pun intended to engagement surveys and so on, but they're a snapshot in time. I've always believed, some of the best HR people I've seen is they literally just ping random 10 people, right? Who they know, right, relatively well, so people don't get spooked, like, why is HR reaching out to me, right? But folks who you've interacted with in your day-to-day job, and say, hey, just ask simple questions, right? Three simple questions. Number one, hey, how are you feeling today? Right, right, right. Uh, Number two, what are you working on? Where do you think you're getting stuck, right? And number three, how do you feel about working with your people as well as your leader in general, right? Or leadership rather, so that way you're not pointing to their direct manager.
Hmm.
But those kinds of questions and the answers, you'll be surprised, and I'm sure the listeners here have much more experience than I do. That's always worked well for me. Just those three questions, just really getting at how people feel.
Great, great pointers. Thank you for that. So that brings us to the fun part of today's conversation. It's our question connection round. And ready? Who's one person you've gained in your network in the last year that you think all of us should know in the HR tech world?
Oh boy. So I will say one of the first analysts who I actually did a podcast with about a year and a half ago with as well. Ben Eubanks is great out there. William Tincup is another gentleman in the recruiting tech world. Tim Sackett is another one. So those are the three who I've actually I know you only asked about one, but I'll
Cheating,
I'll
cheating.
give you
A lot of
three.
people are cheating on this question. I know it's hard to, pinpoint one contact. We love
No, but
all our
three
friends.
these three are the ones who've made time for me as I'm kind of, went from HR to being a CEO of a SaaS company. And they've been just amazing, amazing, sounding boards.
Absolutely. What's your favorite HR podcast other than the one you're attending today?
Jay, I'm going to age myself a bit. I'm not much of a podcast listener, to be honest.
Okay.
Uh, I'm just not, right? But I love speaking at them, just because there's a wider audience I feel I can share my experiences with.
Well, you've got to listen to HR Bytes now. Come on.
Yes, I will. I'm definitely going to sign up with that one. My source of kind of just kind of getting to know what's going on out there is just talking to HR peers. Right, like I mentioned before, I am old school from that perspective. I literally, ping them and I'll say, "Hey, so and so, what's going on in your world?" Right, and I'll have very specific three questions. And that's how that's how I try to gain knowledge and stay up to speed with what's going on in HR.
Okay. And what's your favorite LinkedIn Learning or webinar related to HR tech that you've attended and you want everyone else to watch and learn as well from?
Yeah, I would say there's quite a few there as well. But there's a lot of focus right now actually on diversity and inclusion. So there was one I should have prepared better for this, Jay. I can come back to you with that. But there's one that came to mind around how do you use technology to make sure that you're not impacting equity and inclusion in your workforce.
Absolutely.
I
We'll
think
link that in the show notes below. So if you send me the link, I'll link that in the show notes for everyone.
sounds good. Thank you.
hmm Given the upheaval of all things in 2020, what's one workplace trend that you think is here to stay?
uh, Workplace trend here to stay. I would say uh, a more distributed workforce, right? Where it traditionally wasn't in industries, uh, and I would say that's and maybe even less travel. Right, right.
I don't know about that, but business travel, okay. But, travel to see new places,
Right.
I'd love to get back on that.
Yeah, I meant business travel because I think
Okay.
companies have realized how much savings they can have, and of course the likes of Zoom and
hmm
Teams
Yep.
and all the technology we have,
Yeah.
where we've shown we can actually grow business without having the face to face meetings, right? Now
Yep.
that's not to say you can't have them, but it's a trend I believe that's here to stay because they're from a CFO perspective that's a huge savings, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, we've kind of seen this in action in the past 10 months, where an attitude of gratitude has really worked for a lot of folks in every function across the business, right? In the HR community, I know a lot of folks who are doing great things, giving back and helping each other out. How do you enjoy giving back to the HR community?
Yeah, such a great question, Jay. Right, so. Uh, I do connect with a ton of people on LinkedIn. Very responsive. I mean, I have a 24-hour turnaround. That's a goal that I have personally, right? Uh, and the way I try to help them is if anybody's looking for a career or a career change, just get them connected to the right people in the HR community, right? Of course, I'm a Forbes HR Council member, and I do a lot of articles there in terms of just thought leadership and various topics as well. But ultimately, where I find the most joy is when somebody is wanting to move in their career either laterally or upwards. Just really trying to make the connections because that's who we are. We are connectors as leaders.
Absolutely. And thank you for all the work that you do in the Forbes HR Council as my fellow council member, and also in the HR community. You know, you do a lot of stuff. So keep doing what you're doing. It really resonates with my work. You know, all the things that you do. I love the insights that you provide. So thank you for being there for all of us in the HR community.
Well,
And
thank you as well, and thank you for making this possible.
absolutely. Thank you so much for being my guest today. And if there's a LinkedIn, article that you'd like to share, I'll share it in the show notes that might help our audience across the globe. Just let me know. Also, if our listeners would like to connect with you, what is the best way for them to reach you online?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best way. Twitter, HR for Life is my user name there. And one, just I did write an article about pragmatic approaches to employee experience. That's a Forbes article as well as a LinkedIn article. So I'd love to share that with the audience here as well. It's a very pragmatic roadmap to how we think about the employee experience, because employee experience, everybody talks about it. It's such a huge topic, but really I've rarely seen anybody actually take it down to the nuts and bolts of what it means, right?
Absolutely.
uh, and that's what I've attempted to do in that article that I wrote.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you, audience, for tuning in today. I'm looking forward to bringing you more fantastic stories of HR professionals leveraging technology. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you.